The clink of my porcelain teacup against its saucer was the only sound in the perfectly ordered kitchen. A rhythm I cherished. Sunlight, filtered through the meticulously cleaned window, illuminated dust motes dancing in the air, but none dared to land on my polished countertops. It was a Tuesday morning. Exactly the kind of Tuesday morning I had carefully curated for the past 7 years of my marriage to Gabriel. He sat across from me, nursing a lukewarm coffee, scrolling idly on his phone. An old habit I'd long ceased to comment on. Much like his tendency to leave his laptop open on the kitchen island, a digital window into his digital life I occasionally glimpsed, usually ignored. "Isabella," he began, his voice surprisingly formal, breaking the comfortable silence. I looked up, a slight, expectant tilt of my head, a small smile playing on my lips. My internal clock, precise as ever, noted it was precisely 7:15 a.m. We usually discussed our day's schedule or weekend plans around 7:20. This early interruption was unusual. "I have something to tell you," he continued, placing his phone face down. A rare gesture that instantly sharpened my senses. A tiny alarm bell, no louder than the flutter of a butterfly's wings, went off in the back of my mind. He cleared his throat. "Cassidy is having surgery. A fairly significant one. She'll need a lot of care afterwards. And, well, she asked if I could stay with her for a while." My smile remained. Unflustered, undeterred. It was a well-practiced mask. One that had served me faithfully through countless minor disappointments and frustrations with Gabriel over the years. This, however, felt different. My stomach did a slow, cold roll, but my expression betrayed nothing. Gabriel, bless his oblivious heart, seemed to expect an outburst, a tearful plea, perhaps even a dramatic accusation. Instead, I simply blinked. "Oh, Gabriel," I said, my voice soft, laced with an almost saccharine sweetness. "How wonderfully altruistic of you to care for your ex-wife, after all this time." I even reached across the table to pat his hand, a gesture that clearly startled him. He flinched, then quickly composed himself, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes quickly replaced by relief. He'd probably anticipated a more difficult conversation. "Yes, well," he stammered. "It's the right thing to do. She doesn't have anyone else close by, and it's a delicate procedure. It could take a few weeks, maybe a month or two, for her to fully recover." He avoided my gaze, focusing instead on a crumb on his placemat that I'd missed during my morning clean. A month or two. With Cassidy. The same Cassidy he swore he hadn't spoken to in years, until a chance encounter at a mutual friend's birthday party 6 months ago. The same Cassidy whose existence had recently begun to pepper our dinner conversations, always framed as a figure of pity, a woman struggling alone. My mind, ever the meticulous archivist, began cross-referencing this sudden announcement with all the subtle shifts I'd observed. A new lightness in Gabriel's step, an unusual eagerness to answer his phone out of my earshot, the small, almost imperceptible widening of his pupils when her name was mentioned. "Of course, darling," I said, my smile widening, showing just the right amount of wifely understanding. "Family always comes first, doesn't it? When do you plan to move over?" His eyes, darting back to mine, were a mixture of surprise and a rather smug sense of triumph. He'd won, he thought. He'd delivered his bombshell. And I, the ever-placid Isabella, had taken it with grace. He probably imagined me weeping into my pillow later, while he was off playing the hero. He was so incredibly predictable. This was good. This was perfect. My calm, almost cheerful acceptance was the first, most crucial step of my plan. Though Gabriel, in his self-absorbed world, was completely unaware he was even on a chessboard. He only saw a quiet, compliant wife. He never saw the architect behind the elegant game that was about to begin. The days that followed Gabriel's announcement unfolded with a meticulous predictability I both despised and relied upon. He packed, with my quiet assistance, selecting clothes and personal effects, all under the guise of an urgent, humanitarian mission. I made sure to pack his favorite herbal teas, the precise blend for his delicate digestion, and ironed his shirts with an almost maternal tenderness, each gesture a subtle note in a symphony of manipulation. His departure, when it finally came, was less a wrenching goodbye, and more like the tidying of a forgotten corner. The house, usually filled with his low hum of self-importance, or the subtle clatter of his disregard, settled into a profound quiet. A peace, yes, but one that felt thin, stretched taut over an abyss of unsettling questions. It was the calm before the storm, and I, the solitary meteorologist, knew exactly where the eye was forming. A few days after Gabriel had settled into Cassidy's care, I found myself drawn, almost subconsciously, to the kitchen island. He'd forgotten his charging cable, a minor oversight that usually wouldn't warrant a second thought, but something compelled me to open his forgotten laptop. The same one he'd so often left ajar, its screen a silent invitation I'd always politely declined. This time, the invitation felt insistent. A few clicks, a familiar password, his birth year, a testament to his staggering lack of imagination, and I was in. My finger hovered over the email icon, a strange mix of dread and resolute purpose swirling within me. I clicked. The subject lines alone were a punch to the gut. Not for their content, but for their sheer existence. Our little secret, one read, dated 2 months prior. Another, progress on the new arrangement. From a month ago, I scrolled, my heart a dull throb against my ribs, through threads discussing not an unexpected surgery, but a meticulously planned, new chapter they'd been orchestrating for months. Cosmetic surgery, not a life-threatening injury, was the real reason Cassidy needed care. They debated color swatches for Cassidy's remodel, not hospital schedules. There was talk of moving finances and making sure everything was secure on our end. The world, which Gabriel had so carefully constructed around me, began to splinter, revealing a much darker, more calculated reality beneath. The next day, over coffee with Maria, I casually mentioned Gabriel's noble self-sacrifice. Maria, ever the fountain of local gossip, furrowed her brow. Cassidy? Surgery? She mused. Oh yes. I heard about that. Through Lauren, you know, who works at the med spa on Elm. Apparently Cassidy had quite the extensive reconstructive procedure, a full facelift, eye lift, the works. Very hush-hush, but Lauren said she was practically glowing when she left. The pieces clicked into place with a chilling precision, not a debilitating injury, but an elective enhancement. Gabriel's narrative, already crumbling from the emails, now lay in shards at my feet. The depth of his deception, not just to me but to public perception, was staggering. That evening, with a cup of calming chamomile tea in hand, a cruel irony, given the storm raging within, I meticulously reviewed our joint bank statements. My meticulous nature, often dismissed by Gabriel as an endearing eccentricity, now served as my sharpest weapon, and there they were. A series of small, consistent withdrawals over the past 3 months, each just under the threshold that would typically flag for an alert. Not large enough to be immediately suspicious on their own, but collectively, they amounted to a significant sum, draining steadily from our shared prosperity. They were labeled ambiguously: consulting fees, home improvement, miscellaneous, lies, all of them. Gabriel wasn't just leaving me for his ex-wife. He was systematically siphoning funds, building a secret life, brick by deceitful brick, even as he spoke of his altruism. The deceptive sense of peace had fully evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. The game, it seemed, was far more insidious than I had initially imagined, and I was ready to play. The game required more than just readiness, it demanded performance, and I was about to deliver an Oscar-worthy one. My serene composure, which had so unnerved Gabriel in the early days of his announcement, now became the cornerstone of my strategy. Each interaction, every carefully chosen word, every placid smile, was a deliberate stroke in a painting only I could see. An intricate design that would eventually reveal his true colors to the world. Helping Gabriel pack his bags was a particular highlight of this macabre theater. My movements were graceful, my hands gentle as I folded his shirts, organized his toiletries, and even sorted his favored worn-out socks. "You mustn't forget these, darling," I'd murmur, holding up a pair, my eyes meeting his with an innocent, concerned glint. He would nod, a flicker of gratitude mixed with his usual self-absorption. The truth was, each folded shirt was an opportunity to observe, to note the precise contents of his life, the items he deemed essential enough to take with him to his ailing ex-wife's home. I catalogued them all mentally, building a comprehensive inventory that would, I knew, eventually prove useful. His relief, a visible sagging of his shoulders as I offered assistance, was a grim satisfaction. He saw a wife accepting her fate. I saw a pawn moving precisely where I needed him to be, the effort of maintaining that gentle, understanding gaze, to keep my hands from shaking, felt like holding a fragile, overflowing teacup perfectly still. My jaw ached from the subtle clenching, a constant companion to the saccharine sweetness on my lips. My performance extended beyond the confines of our home. "I've made a hearty chicken soup for Cassidy," I announced to Gabriel one morning, presenting a meticulously packed thermal container, and a special blend of chamomile and lavender tea for her nerves. "She'll need her strength for recovery." Gabriel merely grunted, distracted, barely looking up from his phone, which he was once again neglecting to lock. He accepted the offerings without question, seeing only my generosity. But for me, each ingredient was a tiny barb, each aromatic waft of the healing tea steeped in bitter irony. I imagined Cassidy sipping it, oblivious, while the roots of her own undoing were carefully watered by my hand. It was a tangible extension of my support, broadcast for anyone who might be listening, especially Gabriel. My mother, bless her gossipy heart, was the perfect conduit for disseminating the carefully constructed narrative I was weaving. A phone call, placed with calculated casualness, was all it took. "Oh, Mother, you won't believe Gabriel's noble sacrifice," I began, my voice a delicate blend of wistful admiration and feigned sadness. "He's moved in with Cassidy to care for her after her surgery. Such a dear, selfless man, wouldn't you agree? It just shows his true character, always putting others first." I paused, allowing her imagination to fill in the blanks, to conjure images of Gabriel tirelessly nursing a gravely ill Cassidy back to health. I knew she wouldn't question the surgery part. Gabriel's reputation as a compassionate, if occasionally misguided, man was already well established. Instead, the inherent drama of an ex-husband moving in with his ex-wife would be too tantalizing to resist. The seed was planted. I could practically hear the gears turning in her mind, the mental compilation of names and phone numbers she would call to share this extraordinary tale of marital selflessness. Within hours, I was certain, Gabriel's altruism would be the talk of our social circles, the subject of whispered conversations over coffee and bridge games. Throughout these days, I maintained my facade with unwavering resolve. My public persona remained unruffled, radiating an almost saintly acceptance, but beneath the placid surface, my mind was a churning database, collecting every detail, every nuance, every slight. Every interaction was a data point, every casual remark a potential clue. Gabriel, in his self-congratulatory stupor, never once detected the intricate web I was spinning around him. He saw a quiet, compliant wife, accepting her lot. He never saw the architect behind the elegant game, never realized that every piece on the board was moving precisely according to my design. The tears would come later, when the audience was gone, when the final act had played out. For now, there was only the cold, hard clarity of purpose. The carefully crafted silence of the house, now devoid of Gabriel's imposing presence, was not empty, but rather amplified, vibrating with the unspoken questions I carried. His self-assured departure had, ironically, gifted me the very key I needed: unhindered access. It was a Tuesday afternoon, a day usually reserved for detailed meal planning and tending to my orchid collection. Instead, I stood before the heavy mahogany filing cabinet in his study, a piece of furniture he'd always kept locked, ostensibly to safeguard his important business documents. A faint, almost imperceptible scratch near the lock mechanism caught my eye, a detail I'd noted months ago during a cleaning spree, dismissing it then as mere wear and tear. Now, it resonated with meaning. I retrieved a small, ornate key from the bottom of his forgotten desk drawer, a key he'd once carelessly joked was for emergencies only, hidden beneath a stack of outdated tax returns. It slid into the lock with a soft, decisive click, a sound that echoed the opening of a vault. Inside, neat rows of folders lay like sleeping vipers. My fingers, steady despite the tremor beginning to build in my chest, traced the labels: investments, legal, property deeds. It was within the legal section, tucked beneath a stack of old warranty documents, that I found it. A thick, cream-colored envelope, sealed with a corporate logo I didn't recognize. My name wasn't on it. Cassidy Morrison's name was. My breath hitched. With a decisive tear, I opened it. The first document was a life insurance policy. Cassidy Morrison insured. Policy amount: $500,000. My blood ran cold, but what truly froze me was the designated beneficiary. Gabriel. Not her parents, not a sibling, not even a distant charity. Just Gabriel. $500,000. The sheer audacity, the cold calculation, was breathtaking. This wasn't just about moving on with an ex-wife. This was about a grotesque financial scheme, a plot that hinged on Cassidy's very existence, or lack thereof. The surgery suddenly took on a far more sinister hue. Was it merely a cover, or a means to an end? A vulnerability to be exploited? The full weight of his casual carelessness regarding his open laptop, the ambiguous email threads, and the clandestine withdrawals crashed down on me, coalescing into a terrifying clarity. My hands, now trembling undeniably, reached for the next document in the envelope. It was a property transfer agreement, dated just 3 weeks prior. It stated, in unambiguous legal jargon, that Cassidy Morrison was transferring a significant percentage of ownership of her home, the very home Gabriel was now occupying under the guise of caregiving, to Gabriel, a co-ownership clause, a silent claim to her most valuable asset. The dots connected with sickening speed. He hadn't just moved in, he was moving times and times on her entire life, her future, her very security. The cosmetic surgery wasn't just a deviation from his story. It was a brilliant, tragic distraction. While Cassidy was vulnerable, recovering from an elective procedure she likely believed would enhance her life, Gabriel was meticulously dismantling it, piece by piece, under the radar. Each clause, each legal term, painted a picture of predatory intent that made the blood drain from my face. This wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was a meticulously engineered ambush. The air in the study grew heavy, pressing down on me. It wasn't just infidelity, nor simple desertion. This was a premeditated act of financial fraud. A meticulously planned conspiracy that had been unfolding right under my nose, disguised by platitudes and feigned altruism. He hadn't just built a secret life. He was attempting to build a New Times life. A wealthier one, on the ruins of Cassidy's assets, and potentially, her demise. The withdrawals from our joint account, the consulting fees, the home improvement, were not for an innocent affair. They were funding this elaborate charade, setting the groundwork for his grand scheme. Gabriel wasn't merely a careless husband. He was a predator, patiently circling his prey, and I, the placid Isabella, the understanding wife, had been living with him, sleeping beside him, for 7 years. The cold resolve hardened into an unbreakable, diamond-sharp purpose. He had not merely betrayed me, he had insulted my intelligence with his crude, transparent lies. And for that, he would pay. He would pay for every penny, every lie, and every meticulous calculation he thought I was too oblivious to see. The cold resolve that had solidified within me now demanded action. Immediate and precise. My smartphone, usually a tool for managing my meticulously planned life, transformed into an instrument of justice. I laid each document flat on Gabriel's pristine mahogany desk, positioning them under the best available light, adjusting angles with surgical precision. The life insurance policy, then the property transfer agreement, followed by the ambiguous bank statements that now screamed theft. Click. 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 Each flash of the camera felt like an evidentiary hammer blow, chipping away at Gabriel's carefully constructed edifice of lies. I captured every signature, every date, every damning clause, ensuring the metadata on each image would corroborate its authenticity and origin. No detail was too small, no margin for error acceptable. Once the digital copies were secured, I moved to the printer in my home office, a machine Gabriel rarely used, preferring to have his assistant handle such mundane tasks. The hum of it coming to life felt like a battle hymn. I printed multiple copies of everything, the policies, the agreements, the email threads, even enlarged sections of the bank statements highlighting the suspicious withdrawals. As each page emerged, stark and incriminating, I took a red pen, not for anger, but for clarity. I began annotating, drawing connecting lines between the email discussions and the dates on the financial transactions, adding brief, clinical notes about the discrepancies in Gabriel's narrative versus Maria's revelation about Cassidy's cosmetic surgery. Gabriel claimed injury, Maria confirmed cosmetic surgery via Lauren Med Spa. I scrawled beside a copy of an email discussing post-op recovery. Withdrawals align with new arrangement emails, I noted next to the bank statement. I constructed a concise timeline, a chronological unraveling of their deceit, laying bare the months of planning, the calculated steps towards financial exploitation. My hand was steady, my mind sharp, each annotation a step closer to the inevitable reckoning. The emotional tempest within me was confined, for now, to a distant echo, drowned out by the urgent rhythm of my purpose. With the physical evidence meticulously catalogued and annotated, I retrieved a pristine manila envelope from my stationery drawer. Another item Gabriel wouldn't notice missing. I slipped the stack of documents inside, each page carefully aligned, ensuring nothing was creased or obscured. The envelope felt surprisingly heavy in my hands. Not with paper, but with the accumulated weight of Gabriel's betrayal and my burgeoning power. It was no longer just paper. It was proof, indisputable and devastating. This wasn't just about my pain. It was about exposing a predator, preventing further harm. My own heartache, a dull, constant ache behind my ribs, was now secondary to the almost cold, hard satisfaction of knowing I held the truth, undeniably, in my grasp. This was not the act of a vengeful wife, but a methodical dismantling of injustice. My resolve, forged in the fires of deception, was not wavering. It was a steel core, guiding my every deliberate move. The elegant game, as I had envisioned it, was progressing precisely according to plan. The next move was crucial. A silent delivery that would ignite the fuse of their carefully constructed conspiracy. The weight of the manila envelope, now neatly tucked onto the passenger seat beside me, was a physical manifestation of the gravity of the moment. My fingers brushed its smooth surface, feeling the edges of the incriminating papers within. A silent testament to Gabriel's treachery. It was just after 4 o'clock, the time Cassidy would typically be home from her physical therapy appointment. Oblivious to the carefully laid trap I was about to spring, the drive to her suburban address was a familiar one. Yet today, every turn, every stoplight, felt imbued with a profound sense of purpose. My heart beat a steady, controlled rhythm, not of fear, but of an unyielding determination. I imagined the unassuming white mailbox at the end of her driveway, a silent sentinel awaiting its explosive contents. Cassidy's neighborhood was one of manicured lawns and stately oaks, each house a quiet declaration of stability. Gabriel had always coveted such a facade, a perfect backdrop for his manufactured success. I parked a block away, beneath the shade of a particularly sprawling oak, the engine ticking softly as it cooled. From this vantage point, I could observe without being noticed. The house itself was charming, newly painted, a reflection of Cassidy's recent cosmetic improvements, now an unwitting canvas for Gabriel's darkest intentions. No lights were on. Good. She was likely resting, perhaps sipping the healing tea I'd so thoughtfully prepared. Utterly unaware of the storm brewing just beyond her perfectly trimmed rose bushes, taking a deep, measured breath, I exited the car. The envelope clutched firmly in my hand, nestled within my handbag as a casual accessory. The short walk felt impossibly long, each step a deliberate punctuation mark in the unfolding narrative. My movements were fluid, nonchalant, as if I were merely a neighbor out for a stroll. When I reached Cassidy's mailbox, a quaint, wrought iron affair, I didn't hesitate. With a swift, practiced motion, I slipped the manila envelope inside. There was no fanfare, no theatrical flourish, just the soft rustle of paper against metal. It was done. The fuse was lit. I could almost hear the low, dangerous sizzle as the flame crept towards its devastating payload. A quiet certainty settled over me. Within 48 hours, Gabriel's meticulously constructed world, built on a foundation of lies and greed, would detonate. Cassidy, upon discovering the damning evidence, would become an unwitting, yet powerful ally in his downfall. She, the beneficiary of his false altruism, would transform into the instrument of his ruin. He believed he was playing a sophisticated game. He had no idea he was merely a puppet on my strings, dancing to a tune I had composed long ago. The journey home was infused with a different kind of quiet. Not the tense anticipatory silence of the outward trip, but one of profound, almost serene satisfaction. The streetlights flickered on as dusk deepened, painting the familiar route in shades of indigo and violet. My mind, usually a flurry of plans and calculations, now allowed itself a rare moment of stillness, savoring the unfolding possibilities. I pictured Cassidy's face as she read the documents, the dawning horror, the fury, and then Gabriel's, stripped bare of his smug self-assurance. The elegant game was indeed progressing, and the opening move of the endgame had just been played. The quiet certainty that had settled over me during the drive home deepened with each passing hour, morphing into a potent, almost tangible anticipation. The world outside hummed with its usual indifferent rhythm, but for me, time was a taut string, vibrating with the promise of imminent rupture. I found myself checking my phone with a regularity I typically disdained. Not for messages, but for the absence of them. A silent vigil for the storm I knew was gathering. It came, as predicted, just under 36 hours after I delivered the envelope. A sharp, insistent ringing that pierced the evening stillness. The caller ID flashed Cassidy Morrison's name, stark and undeniable. My heart gave a single hard thump against my ribs, then steadied. This was it. I answered, my voice a calm, even breath, ready for anything. Cassidy? Is everything all right? I feigned concern, a master of the role by now. A strangled gasp, then a torrent of raw, unbridled fury erupted through the receiver. Everything all right? You sent me those papers, didn't you? You conniving. Oh God, Isabella, I can't believe this. He's a monster. Cassidy's voice was hoarse, choked with rage and something akin to a shattered scream. He lied. All of it was a lie. The insurance, the house. He was going to wait until after the surgery, wasn't he? He wanted me times gone asterisk. Her words tumbled out. A frantic, broken confession, punctuated by sobs and guttural curses. I listened, silently picturing the scene that must have unfolded. Cassidy, reading through the documents, the dawning horror in her eyes as the true horror of Gabriel's intentions solidified. Gabriel, caught in his own web, his smooth excuses turning to dust. What happened, Cassidy? I asked, my tone gentle, almost sympathetic, though a cold satisfaction was coiling in my gut. He tried to deny it. He tried to say times you times forged them, that you were jealous, she shrieked, her voice reaching a crescendo of indignation. But it was all there, his signature on the property transfer. Oh God, the emails. I asked him about the cosmetic surgery, Isabella. And he just started stammering, trying to change the subject. And then I showed him the policy, the Times life insurance policy, Times where he's the beneficiary. He turned white. Isabella, absolutely ghost white. He had nothing to say. He actually tried to tell me it was a mistake, a clerical error. Can you believe him? The gall, I allowed a soft, sorrowful sigh to escape. Oh, Cassidy. I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. I truly am. The lie tasted like victory. Sorry? You're sorry? You times new asterisk? You must have. How did you get these? Why didn't you tell me sooner? Her anger swiveled. Briefly, towards me. But it lacked the raw, visceral venom she reserved for Gabriel. Her true betrayal was from him. I only found out recently myself, Cassidy, I said, carefully choosing my words. And when I did, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let him. He always had a way of charming people, didn't he? Making them believe his version of events. I planted the seed of doubt, subtly reinforcing her own conclusions. Charming? He's a viper. A blood-sucking, gold-digging viper. Cassidy's voice cracked. I told him to get out. I told him if he wasn't out of my house in 15 minutes, I was calling the police and pressing charges for fraud. He tried to argue. Isabella, can you believe it? He tried to times beg times me, told me it was all a misunderstanding. That he loved me. The absurdity of Gabriel's pleas, even in the face of undeniable proof, brought a grim smile to my lips. I saw him packing his ridiculous little overnight bag, muttering to himself. I threw his toothbrush after him. Just watch, Isabella. I'm going to ruin him. I'm going to tell everyone. He deserves everything he gets, Cassidy, I said, my voice firm, devoid of the earlier saccharine sweetness. This was no longer a performance for Gabriel. This was an acknowledgement of a shared truth. He's gone, he's out. I changed the locks immediately, Isabella. I called my lawyer first thing this morning. Thank you. Oh God, Isabella, thank you. You saved me, you truly saved me. The gratitude in her voice was raw, heartfelt, a testament to the magnitude of my intervention. I hung up the phone, a profound sense of exhilaration coursing through me. Gabriel, the man who had woven such a sophisticated web of deceit, had been unceremoniously evicted, his carefully constructed facade shattered by his own greed. His world, built on a foundation of lies and manipulation, had imploded with a spectacular, satisfying force. The climax of my revenge, not a violent confrontation, but a quiet, meticulously orchestrated act of justice, had played out precisely as I had intended. His carefully constructed life had crumbled. Not with a bang, but with the frantic, furious cries of a woman scorned, echoing in the quiet of my kitchen, and I, Isabella, the placid, understanding wife, had been the silent architect of his downfall. The phone rang again, pulling me from my triumphant reverie. This time, it was Gabriel. His voice, when I answered, was a ragged whisper, a stark contrast to the self-assured tone he'd used just days ago. Isabella, he pleaded, the sound laced with desperation. I need your help. Cassidy. She just kicked me out. She's gone completely mad. My composure held firm. Oh, Gabriel, darling. Whatever happened? I feigned a note of gentle concern, though internally, a cold, hard satisfaction bloomed. He launched into a frantic, disjointed explanation, painting Cassidy as unstable, accusing her of delusion, never once acknowledging the damning evidence she must have brandished. Where are you? I interrupted, cutting through his self-serving narrative. I'll come get you. The words felt alien on my tongue, but the role demanded precision. The drive to Cassidy's neighborhood, once a path of silent purpose, was now tinged with a delicious irony. I spotted Gabriel almost immediately, hunched on a park bench, his expensive suitcase beside him like a discarded burden. He looked utterly pathetic. A man stripped of his carefully constructed illusion. He practically fell into the passenger seat, not meeting my gaze. "She's insane, Bella," he muttered, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "Completely unhinged. You have to believe me. She's making up stories, wild accusations." "Oh, Gabriel," I murmured, my voice soft. "What a dreadful ordeal. I can only imagine how confusing this must be for you." My words were carefully chosen, offering sympathy for his time's predicament asterisk. Not his time's innocence asterisk. He began to spin a new narrative. One where Cassidy was the villain and I, his loyal wife, was his only sanctuary. He talked of second chances, of rekindling our love, of how he'd made a mistake, a foolish temporary lapse in judgment that he now deeply regretted. His voice grew thick with feigned remorse, his hand reaching for mine on the center console. I allowed it to rest there for a moment. A cold, lifeless weight, before gently moving my hand to adjust the rearview mirror. As I pulled onto our street, a familiar figure was tending her prize-winning petunias. Mrs. Patterson, our neighborhood's unofficial chronicler of all events, large and small. My internal clock, precise as ever, noted the opportune timing. I slowed the car, just enough. "Isabella, dear," she called out, her eyes widening as she spotted Gabriel beside me. She walked towards the car, a look of mingled curiosity and concern on her face. "Oh, Gabriel, what a surprise. You're back so soon? Is everything all right with poor Cassidy's recovery?" Her gaze, sharp and inquisitive, flickered between us. Gabriel, slumped in his seat, gave a weak, forced smile, his usual charm utterly absent. He mumbled something about unexpected complications. "Oh, Mrs. Patterson," I interjected, my voice dripping with the familiar, saintly understanding. "Gabriel has had quite the trying time. Cassidy's recovery was, unfortunately, more challenging than anticipated. He felt it best to return home for now, as his assistance was no longer, shall we say, productive. I paused, allowing the implications to sink in, ensuring Mrs. Patterson understood that Gabriel's noble mission had ended, not with triumph, but with a rather swift, ignominious return. Mrs. Patterson's eyes, bright with renewed interest, darted to Gabriel, who now looked as if he wished the earth would swallow him whole. "Oh, my dear," she clucked, her tone a perfect blend of pity and gleeful gossip. "How absolutely dreadful for all of you. Well, I'm sure you'll be much more comfortable back in your own home, Gabriel dear." The message was clear. The news of his return, and the ambiguous complications, would be circulating through the neighborhood by morning coffee. Gabriel made no attempt to engage further. He simply stared straight ahead, his shoulders slumped, his once imposing figure now a picture of abject defeat. When I pulled into our driveway, he didn't even wait for me to open the garage. He practically stumbled out of the car, his suitcase clanking as he dragged it behind him. The house, which he had left with such smug confidence, now seemed to swallow him whole, a silent tomb for his shattered pride. He walked straight past me, his steps heavy, the quiet defeat echoing in every sound. His return was not a homecoming, but a surrender, and I, the gracious victor, merely closed the door behind him. He trudged towards the living room, perhaps seeking the false comfort of the sofa, but I intercepted him before he could retreat into its plush depths. My hand, cool and steady, found his arm, guiding him with a gentle but unmistakable pressure. "Not the living room, Gabriel," I said, my voice as calm as a summer lake. "We have something important to discuss in the kitchen." The kitchen, usually the heart of our perfectly ordered domesticity, had been transformed into my war room. The granite island, meticulously polished just hours before, now bore a carefully arranged display of papers. Documents, legal forms, printouts, and neatly stacked folders lay under the soft glow of the recessed lighting. I gestured for him to sit on one of the bar stools, which he did mechanically, his eyes scanning the array with a flicker of confusion that quickly morphed into wary apprehension. I took my place opposite him, the island a psychological barrier between us. My gaze met his directly, unwavering. "I believe you're familiar with these," I began, my voice clear and devoid of emotion, as I slid a crisp white folder across the island towards him. "The divorce papers. Catherine Brennan, my lawyer, assures me they are quite comprehensive. Irreconcilable differences, of course." His eyes widened slightly, a tremor passing through his features. "Isabella. What is this? This is absurd. We can talk about this. I told you. I made a mistake. A terrible lapse in judgment." He tried to reach for my hand, but I subtly pulled back, gesturing to the papers. "Oh, it's far more than a lapse in judgment, Gabriel," I corrected, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching my lips. I pushed another stack of documents towards him. "This, for instance, is the forensic audit I commissioned. It meticulously details every suspicious transaction from our joint accounts over the past 6 months, cross-referenced with your rather revealing email exchanges with Cassidy. The consulting fees, the home improvement allocations. They paint a rather clear picture of systematic financial draining. Wouldn't you agree?" His face began to pale, the color draining from it as he glanced at the detailed spreadsheets, the red annotations I had so carefully added. He mumbled something inarticulate, his gaze flitting nervously from the audit to my impassive face. "And then there's this," I continued, savoring the moment, sliding the manila envelope across the polished surface. "The contents of your locked filing cabinet, Cassidy's life insurance policy, naming you as the sole beneficiary. A rather substantial sum, wouldn't you say? And of course, the property transfer agreement, giving you part ownership of her home, all conveniently arranged around the time of her surgery, a cosmetic one, as Maria's friend at the med spa so helpfully confirmed, not the debilitating injury you so bravely claimed." He flinched, as if physically struck. His eyes, wide and disbelieving, darted from the documents to me, then back to the damning evidence. The mask of denial he had worn for so long began to crack, revealing a raw, terrified vulnerability beneath. "No," he whispered, shaking his head. "No, this is impossible. You couldn't have. How did I know?" I finished his sentence, my voice still perfectly level, almost conversational. "You left your laptop open, Gabriel. So often. A careless habit, I always thought. Turns out, it was merely an invitation. An invitation to discover your little secret. Your new arrangement. I've known for months, darling. Every email, every withdrawal, every carefully constructed lie." His breath hitched. The realization, cold and brutal, dawned in his eyes. He wasn't just caught. He had been times watched asterisk. He wasn't just being accused. He was being times exposed, times by the very person he thought he had so easily deceived. His eyes focused on the manila envelope, then on me. A new, terrible understanding taking hold. "You," he breathed, the word a strangled accusation. "You sent those to Cassidy." I allowed myself a small, triumphant nod. "Indeed. It seemed only fair she understood the true nature of your altruism. She deserved to see the depth of your devotion. Wouldn't you agree? It was, after all, a meticulously planned ambush, and she was merely an unwitting participant in your grand design to accumulate wealth." He pushed back from the counter, sending his stool scraping across the floor. You ruined me. You destroyed everything." His voice was a pathetic croak, his hands clenching into useless fists. The self-assured Gabriel, the charming, manipulative Gabriel, was gone, replaced by a hollow shell of a man, his entire world, painstakingly built on deceit, had collapsed around him, and he finally understood that the architect of its destruction was sitting right in front of him, sipping her silent, victorious tea. His face was a mask of utter horror, not just at what he had lost, but at the chilling realization of who times had orchestrated it. He stared at me, stripped bare of all his lies, truly seeing Isabella for the first time. He recoiled, pushing the bar stool back with such force it nearly toppled, his gaze fixed on me as if I were a venomous serpent, not the wife he had so carelessly discarded. "You can't do this," he choked out, his voice raw, devoid of its usual polished cadence. "You're destroying us." My lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "No, Gabriel. You destroyed us. I am merely ensuring the wreckage is properly cleared away." He opened his mouth to protest, to beg, perhaps to spin another fabrication, but the words seemed to catch in his throat. Choked by the bitter taste of truth, he stumbled backward, away from the evidence-laden island, away from my unwavering gaze, and finally, into the quiet, defeated retreat of the living room, leaving me alone in the sterile silence of the kitchen, surrounded by the undeniable proof of his unraveling. The aftermath unfolded with the swift, unforgiving precision I had anticipated. By morning, the online world had ignited. Cassidy, true to her word, had unleashed a firestorm. Her Facebook post, a scathing detailed exposé, spared no expense in painting Gabriel as the calculating fraud he was. It began with a surprisingly eloquent, yet utterly furious, account of her own vulnerability post-surgery, transitioning seamlessly into the shocking discovery of the life insurance policy and the property transfer. She attached blurred, but recognizable, screenshots of the documents I had sent her, corroborating every accusation. The comments section exploded with outrage. Friends, acquaintances, former colleagues, all expressing a potent mix of disbelief, sympathy for Cassidy, and vitriol for Gabriel. Unbelievable. I always knew he was slimy. Poor Cassidy. Thank God you found out. The digital guillotine had fallen, swiftly and decisively. The impact was immediate and devastating. My phone, usually a quiet companion, buzzed with messages from Maria and Lauren, expressing shock and grim satisfaction. Gabriel's own phone, which I could hear ringing incessantly from the living room, was a testament to his rapidly deteriorating world. Clients called, their tones shifting from professional courtesy to thinly veiled accusation. A prominent financial newspaper, one he often boasted about reading, even ran a small but pointed article about a local businessman embroiled in a shocking fraud scandal. His reputation, meticulously built on a foundation of charm and carefully cultivated connections, crumbled like a sandcastle against an incoming tide. He spent hours pacing, shouting into the phone, attempting to spin new versions of reality, accusing Cassidy of slander, of being mentally unstable, of fabricating evidence. Each attempt was more pathetic than the last, falling on deaf ears already convinced by the digital record. After 2 days of this chaotic performance, I decided it was time to deliver the final, unassailable directive. I found him in the living room, slumped on the very sofa he had once envisioned sharing with me. His face drawn, eyes bloodshot. The smell of stale desperation clung to him. "Gabriel?" I said, my voice cutting through the oppressive silence. "I have spoken with Catherine." He looked up, a flicker of bewildered hope in his eyes, as if he imagined I might still be his loyal defender. It vanished quickly as he saw the steely resolve in my gaze. "As of this moment, Catherine has initiated the process of legal separation and divorce. More importantly, she has confirmed that this house, by virtue of the prenuptial agreement you so carelessly dismissed as romantic fluff, is solely mine. Your name was never added to the deed, nor to the mortgage, despite your frequent promises." His jaw dropped. "What? No! That's impossible. We're married. It's our house." He scrambled to his feet, his voice rising in panic. "It was my house, Gabriel. Long before you entered it," I stated, my voice unwavering. "And it will be mine long after you leave." Catherine has prepared the necessary legal documents. You have precisely 30 days to vacate the premises. All of your personal belongings must be removed by then. Any attempts to dispute this will be met with the full force of the law, and I assure you, you are in no position to fight a legal battle, especially one involving financial fraud and deceit. He stared at me, his face contorting in a grotesque mask of fury and disbelief. You witch! You calculated, cold-hearted witch! You planned all of this? Indeed, I did, I replied, a serene calm settling over me. Every elegant detail, every perfectly timed revelation. You underestimated me, Gabriel. You mistook my orderliness for weakness, my quiet observation for ignorance, and now, you will pay the price for that fatal misjudgment. He stammered, his words dissolving into incoherent rage. But I simply turned and walked away, leaving him amidst the ruins of his ambition. His attempts to salvage his image were futile. The world had already made its judgment etched in digital permanence, and the house, once a shared dream, was now merely the threshold of his inevitable downfall. The 2 weeks that followed my ultimatum passed with an almost surgical precision, during which Gabriel's futile struggle against the inevitable only intensified. His angry pleas and desperate phone calls quickly devolved into impotent rage, as the weight of his unraveling became undeniable. The world, once so easily manipulated by his charm, had already moved on, leaving him isolated in the digital debris of Cassidy's very public accusations. The final, decisive blow came swiftly, not from me, but from Cassidy Morrison herself. A restraining order, legally binding and unequivocal, prohibiting any contact. Stripped of his former pretenses and prospects, Gabriel found himself relocating not to some distant, lucrative opportunity, but to a sparse, rented apartment in a less than desirable part of town, his gilded cage replaced by something far more befitting his true character. The house, blessedly silent, slowly began to exhale. It was during this period of quiet consolidation that I found myself spending more time with my mother, often over afternoon tea in the now peaceful sunroom. One particularly golden afternoon, a rare vulnerability softened her usual pragmatic demeanor. She spoke, for the first time in such detail, about her own first marriage. A tempestuous affair that predated her meeting my father. Her words were a stark mirror to my own recent experience. A tale of a man, charming on the surface, who had, in his own way, attempted to diminish her, to control her finances and her spirit under the guise of protection. He too had left her with a mountain of hidden debts and a fractured sense of self, just as she was beginning to find her footing in a budding career. I remember thinking I was completely alone, Isabella, she confessed, her eyes fixed on a distant point, a memory playing behind them, that I had somehow failed, that his deceit was a reflection of my own shortcomings. But then I looked around, really looked, and saw so many women carrying similar scars, quietly rebuilding, refusing to be defined by another's treachery. She reached across the table, her hand covering mine, her touch unexpectedly gentle. You are not alone, my dear. Not truly. We learn, we rise, and we become stronger for it. Listening to her, I felt a profound connection, a deep understanding that transcended generations, the realization that I was not alone, that such insidious patterns of deception were not unique to my story, brought an unexpected sense of solace. Her resilience, her quiet strength in rebuilding her life after that first heartbreak, became a beacon. It wasn't just about surviving, it was about thriving, about reclaiming her narrative and her autonomy in the face of immense personal and financial challenge. My own pain, though fresh, felt less singular, less isolating, woven into a larger tapestry of female fortitude. Inspired, I began the quiet, deliberate work of emotional healing and reclaiming my space. The house, once a battleground of unseen tensions, now felt like a sanctuary, a blank canvas awaiting my true self. I started by decluttering, purging not just Gabriel's remaining vestiges, a forgotten tie in the closet, a book on the bedside table, but also the emotional debris of our shared past. Each item removed, each space rearranged, was a step towards shedding the old narrative and embracing a new one. I painted the living room a brighter shade of cream, a color Gabriel had always deemed too stark. I rearranged the furniture, pulling the sofa away from the wall, opening up the space, symbolically opening up my own life. It was a quiet revolution, transforming the echoes of betrayal into a vibrant symphony of new beginnings. Amidst the fresh scent of cream paint and the subtle rearranging of furniture, a gentle ping from my laptop announced an incoming email. An unexpected missive that momentarily pulled me from my quiet revolution. The sender was Cassidy Morrison. My heart, which had settled into a steady rhythm of purpose, gave a slight flutter before I clicked it open. The subject line was simply, "Thank you." The body of the email was raw, vulnerable, and profoundly grateful. "Isabella," it read, "I don't know what to say. I've been through every document, every screenshot you sent. It's all true. He was going to, I can't even articulate the full horror of it. I was so blind, so stupid, thinking he cared about me or my recovery. You saved me, Isabella. You truly did. From what he was planning? From the financial ruin? Perhaps even from something far worse. I was so angry at first. At both of you. But now I just feel an overwhelming sense of relief and gratitude. Thank you for being brave enough to show me the truth. I wish I had listened sooner." I read it twice. A quiet warmth spreading through me. A feeling far more satisfying than any fleeting triumph. It wasn't about vengeance. Not anymore. It was about justice. About truth. And about preventing a greater wrong. Cassidy's gratitude was a potent balm, confirming the righteousness of my actions. It was an unexpected alliance, born from shared betrayal, and it cemented my resolve to fully reclaim my life and my home with an unburdened heart. Her words, so honest and stripped bare, felt like a silent benediction, releasing me from any lingering doubt about the path I had chosen. The subtle changes I had begun now gave way to a bolder, more expansive vision. The house, no longer burdened by the ghost of Gabriel's imposing taste, was ready for a complete metamorphosis. I consulted architects and interior designers, not for them to impose their grand visions, but for their expertise in translating my newfound freedom and deeply personal desires into tangible form. I wanted light, openness, and a sense of vibrant, understated elegance that was authentically times mine *, unmarred by any compromise. The heavy, formal drapes Gabriel had insisted upon were summarily replaced by sheer linen, allowing the sunlight to flood every room, chasing away not just physical shadows but the lingering echoes of deceit. Dark, imposing polished wood gave way to lighter, natural tones, reflecting a brighter future. The formal dining room, which had always felt stiflingly grand and rarely used, became a bright, airy library and art studio, a space dedicated entirely to my own creative pursuits and intellectual exploration. Gabriel had always filled the house with imposing, masculine art and ponderous furniture, reflecting his own inflated sense of self-importance. Now, each piece was carefully curated, chosen for its comfort, its aesthetic appeal, and its ability to inspire peace, warmth, and joy. Every design choice became a deliberate act of self-reclamation, a physical manifestation of my evolving identity. The new, custom-built kitchen island, now faced with warm, reclaimed wood, was not just a surface for meal preparation. It was a symbol of strength, organic beauty, and genuine connection, a stark contrast to the cold, calculating granite where Gabriel had revealed his deceit. The carefully chosen palette of soft greens, muted blues, and warm creams throughout the house reflected the calm yet vibrant energy I now sought to cultivate within myself. Open shelving replaced closed cabinets in the living areas, symbolizing a life lived with transparency and a willingness to embrace new possibilities. The small, secluded garden I designed in the backyard, brimming with fragrant herbs and delicate wildflowers, became my personal sanctuary, a space for growth and quiet contemplation, a world away from the barren, formal rose beds Gabriel had so admired. It was a tangible testament to my journey, each petal, each leaf, a promise of new life blossoming from the ashes of betrayal. The home, once a silent witness to Gabriel's carefully constructed illusions and my own subdued, perfectly ordered existence, was now singing with my true voice. The transformation was not just aesthetic. It was an emotional and spiritual renewal. It was a journey from the stifling confines of betrayal to the boundless horizons of empowerment. The scars of his deceit were not erased, but they were no longer hidden. Instead, they were woven into the tapestry of my strength, a quiet reminder of the insidious forces I had faced and overcome. This wasn't merely a renovation. It was an excavation of my true self, a foundation laid not for another's approval, but for my own enduring peace and profound independence. The house, finally, was truly home. 6 months after the last brushstroke had dried, and the final piece of furniture found its rightful place, the vibrant hum of conversation filled every corner of what was now unequivocally my sanctuary. The soft glow of twilight mingled with the warm, inviting light from within, spilling onto the newly laid patio where laughter danced on the evening air. This wasn't merely a housewarming, it was a celebration of freedom, a jubilee of rebirth. Friends and family, their faces bright with genuine happiness, milled about, admiring the transformation, their voices a symphony of congratulations and shared joy. Maria, her eyes sparkling, raised a glass of champagne. "To Isabella," she toasted, pulling me into a warm embrace, the architect of her own destiny. My mother, looking younger and lighter than I had seen her in years, squeezed my hand, a silent acknowledgement of our shared journey, our quiet victories over the shadows of the past. Each carefully chosen detail of the renovated home seemed to resonate with the collective joy. The open-plan kitchen, once a stage for Gabriel's deceit, now bustled with the preparation of cheerful appetizers, the clinking of dishes harmonious rather than discordant. In the former formal dining room, now my light-filled library and art studio, I watched a group of friends leafing through art books, their discussions animated, their presence a balm to my soul. This space, once filled with Gabriel's heavy, self-important silence, now pulsed with creativity and genuine connection. I moved among my guests, a serene smile gracing my lips, my heart feeling lighter than it had in years. There was no pretense, no performance, just authentic gratitude for the genuine support that surrounded me. A quiet moment, as I refilled my glass by the new reclaimed wood island, allowed my thoughts to drift, briefly, to Gabriel. His name, once a constant, grating presence, now barely registered as a distant echo. The restraining order from Cassidy had been the final nail in the coffin of his social standing, effectively severing his last ties to any semblance of respectability. His cheap apartment, the constant threat of litigation, the utter professional and personal isolation, it was all a direct, undeniable consequence of his choices. He had lost everything he valued. Wealth, status. He was, I knew, still attempting to spin his woeful tale to anyone who would listen. But the digital evidence, the public record of his fraud, rendered his pathetic attempts at victimhood utterly futile. He existed now on the periphery of my consciousness, a cautionary tale, a ghost of a man whose self-inflicted misery merely underscored the vibrancy of my own hard-won peace. My gaze returned to the bustling party, to the faces of the people who truly mattered. This was my life now, vibrant and unbound, built not on facades but on truth and resilience. The house, bathed in the soft glow of myriad fairy lights, seemed to hum with contentment, a reflection of the profound happiness I felt within its walls. I had faced the storm, navigated the betrayal, and emerged not only intact but utterly transformed. Every laugh, every shared story, every clink of glasses felt like a testament to my freedom. a joyous affirmation of my new beginning. I was Isabella, truly independent, truly authentic, and truly, profoundly home.